In the previous video, we disassembled the cylinders and pistons. To disconnect the piston from the connecting rod, the piston pin had to be pushed away. This does not always go smoothly. In an engine with a lot of mileage, with a lot of wear, the piston pin can get very stuck. This drawing was discussed in detail in video 18. You see here a cylinder with its piston. The piston is attached to the connecting rod by a piston pin. In Volkswagen's Type 1 engine, the piston pin is mounted floating. The piston pin is mounted with so-called sliding fit or clearance fit. The piston pin should be able to move freely in the axial direction. In engines that have some mileage on them, the piston pin will no longer move axially. Since the piston pin should move axially freely, it is secured on both sides with circlips. Here we show how smoothly a new piston pin should be able to move in the piston. The piston pin is slide fit and should be able to move axially smoothly. If you feel resistance, as with this piston pin, do not force. You could damage the piston and connecting rod. Sometimes it is enough to clean the piston pin and piston, but in this case there is more to it. This piston pin has a deep groove, as we show here. Forcing the piston pin into the piston, with a hammer, for example, or the piston pin puller we will show later, can have disastrous consequences. So proceed calmly and thoughtfully. Now let's take a look at the circlips. On original VW pistons, the circlips are equipped with ears to grip them during assembly or disassembly. How to remove the circlip, we will now show first on a loose piston. Use gripping pliers with long jaws to remove this type of circlip. With the piston still mounted, the operation is a little more difficult. Use a cloth to keep it from bouncing off. You can also use gripping pliers that offer a little more grip, like this one. Be careful not to damage the circlip with these. To install the circlip, use the same technique. We show that here on a loose piston. You have to make sure that the circlip is properly seated in the groove of the piston. Rotate the circlip around. If no resistance is encountered when turning the circlip, then it is properly seated in the groove of the piston. If the pistons have ever been replaced, you may encounter a different type of lock ring, better known as Seeger ring. With special Seeger ring pliers, you can push this type of circlip together. With this type of lock ring, bouncing off is less common. After installing such a Seeger ring, you should also check that it is properly seated in the groove of the piston. Turn the circlip around using Seeger ring pliers. The end position of the circlip has no importance. We will now discuss how to disassemble the piston pin. On an engine in the condition like this AB 1300, the piston pin will be difficult to remove manually. Using a hammer is permissible only when the piston pin is not too tight. Do not use too heavy a hammer for this purpose, and a strike suitable for this application. If you apply too much force, you could damage the engine components. With gentle taps and patience, the piston pin will come loose in most cases. Be careful not to damage the piston rings against the threaded rods, in case you want to use them again. In most cases, the piston pin will be so badly jammed that the hammer technique is not recommended. Here we show how stuck a piston pin can be in the piston. By knocking too hard, you could damage engine parts such as bearings. Therefore, we show this handy tool to disassemble the piston pin without causing damage. It consists of a puller, which comes with several attachments. For the Type 1 piston, this attachment is used. It has a cylindrical shape, which fits well against the piston wall. Nuts of different diameters are included in the kit. Choosing the correct nut to match the inner diameter of the piston pin is crucial here. The nuts have a tapered edge. The idea is for that tapered edge to slide into the opening of the piston pin. That way, it is centered in the piston pin during pull-off, and cannot damage the piston and connecting rod bearing. The nut is made of very soft material, so it will set a little bit in the piston pin, but it is supposed to. This nut lies perfectly in this piston pin. We show the use of this piston pin puller on a loose piston. Slide the puller with its cylindrical attachment into the piston. Turn the 15mm head until the puller just protrudes from the piston. Screw the appropriate nut onto the threaded rod of the puller. The nut has a left-hand thread, so turn counterclockwise to tighten. Turn the 15mm head to pull the piston pin out of the piston. We are doing it by hand here, but in practice the force you'll need will be greater than with a brand new piston. You will have to use a 15mm wrench. The nut is nicely centered by its tapered shape, and can never touch the inside of the piston, or the connecting rod, as it moves through the piston. We now use this piston pin puller on our AB 1300 engine. A rubber mat under the piston serves to protect the piston rings. The puller is pushed into the piston with the correct attachment. The threaded rod of the puller comes out of the piston just enough to accommodate the nut. Use the appropriate nut for this piston pin. Make sure the tapered edge is snug to the inside of the piston pin. Using a 15mm wrench, turn the head of the puller. The piston pin should slowly but surely be pulled out of the piston. To be sure, check that the tapered nut remains properly centered to avoid damage to the connecting rod. If you feel too much resistance, then there is more to it, and you should re-evaluate the situation. On this engine, with some force applied, the piston pin comes off. The advantage of this piston pin puller is that you don't damage the other parts of the engine unnecessarily. When the piston pin is almost completely pushed through the piston, you can manually pull it loose. Now loosen the tapered nut by turning it clockwise. You can now remove the piston pin from the puller. This piston pin puller is only used to remove the piston pin when it is too tight, to push it loose manually, or to get it loose with light taps of a hammer. Mounting the piston pin is always done manually, as the piston pin is floating and should be mounted in the piston with a sliding fit. In the next video, we will look at how to replace the pushrod tubes without having to disassemble the cylinder head and cylinders. More information about all the parts and tools used in this video series can be found as comments under each video on our YouTube channel. See you soon.